All right, let's begin. So, what did I want to first start off by saying? So, in our last lesson, we talked about elements. Remember that elements are composed of atoms that have a very specific atomic number. Now, if you weren't here in the last lesson and you don't have this copied down, I don't want you to copy it down right now. You can copy it down later, either today or tomorrow when you guys are doing remote learning. But just to recap, these guys here are what we're thinking about when it comes to elements. So what I want to then do is add to this information and think about what compounds are and what mixtures are. So where did my markers go? There they are. All right. First off is a compound. So let's write down that word into our notes. Can you guys see that? Oh, you can't see that too well. Is that better? All right. So compound. So when we are thinking about a compound, we're thinking about two or more different, is the key word, elements that are chemically bonded together. You guys should be writing this down. All right, you guys should be writing this down. So first off, we are thinking about what a compound is. They are two or more different elements that are chemically bonded together. Different is a really important key word, and chemically bonded is also another key important word. What that means is that those two atoms are attached to each other. They have some sort of hold on each other. So for example, and a lot of you guys thought this might be a potential element on the periodic table, and you asked me if it was. You said carbon dioxide. And I said to a lot of you, say that again and think about it really slowly. Carbon dioxide. What that has is carbon and two oxygens, thus the di. Di means two. So this here is an example of a compound. So if I was to break this down and look at its different components, this compound here, that C tells me it's made up of carbon. That O tells me it's made up, it also has an oxygen. So are those two different elements? Yes or no? Yes. Yeah, they are two different elements, so that automatically falls into the category of compound. And the last thing I want to show you, and this is going to number 4 of our criteria, understanding what the symbols mean. You see how there's a small 2 behind the O? Yeah. That means that there are 2 atoms of oxygen. So I just want to, like I said, explain some of the symbols that we're looking at. Carbon doesn't have any number behind it. So if I don't see a number behind any of my elements, that tells me that the number is 1. So there's only 1 carbon and there's 2 oxygens. And that is a compound because those things are chemically bound together. If I had, for example, H2, and now we know that's a compound because I see how there's 2 hydrogens chemically attached together. Is that an element or is that a compound? It's still an element. So if I have this here, this is an element of hydrogen because it's the same thing.
But if we add oxygen.
If we added oxygen and made it like H2O2, that would be hydrogen peroxide. So if you want, I can write that one down so you guys can have another example. Whenever you guys see oxide, it normally hints that you have oxygen. So hydrogen peroxide would be H2O2.
Oxidized hydrogen.
Huh? Oxidized hydrogen. So you see how in this case, this one is different from this one here because we have that oxygen being added. So that oxygen being added is a different element, making it a compound. In this compound, the two elements that I have would be hydrogen and oxygen, and for each one, I would have 2. Do you see how we're reading the symbols? Do you want me to write that down? Are you guys okay?
Write that.
Write it down? All right, if you guys want it. So that one's hydrogen. Oops. Hydrogen. That one is oxygen. And in both cases, there's 2 atoms of each. I'll grab a different color for that. So how many atoms total? If I said there's 2 atoms each, 4 total. All right, I'll leave that up to make sure you guys have that written down. Now we'll talk about what mixtures are. Just trying to move it so you guys can see a little easier. All right. So the other 2 words that I want to teach you is a pure substance and also a mixture. So if I have something that's pure, what do you think that means? If I say this is a pure, like water, how many things do you think I'm going to have?
1.
Only 1? And do you think it can be an element, a compound? What do you think? It can actually be both. It just needs to be one of it. So you can't have anything else in that mixture. So if I have a pure substance, it is only one chemical. So you can have a pure element, you can also have a pure compound. All right, I'm hearing music. I need that music to stop playing, because then I'm not sure that you are hearing my notes. Yeah. Anything that I write down, you guys should be writing down. We're all in this together when it comes to the writing. Yeah, we're all in this together. You can sing the High School Musical song. All right. When we talk about mixtures, we are talking about 2 or more substances, and these things are not chemically bound together. And I'm going to underline the word not because that's really important. Not chemically bounded together. So what that means is that I can separate them. And let me give you guys some examples of different forms of mixtures. Now I'm going to abbreviate things as E and C. E for element, C for compound. So I could have a mixture of elements, E and E. And for example, that mixture of elements could be like hydrogen. And let's say it's H2, because remember that H2 is an element. And helium. He. Again, those little letters and everything tells us something that's different. So if I have H versus He, that's the difference between hydrogen and helium. I could also have a mixture of things that are 2 compounds. So I can have a compound and a compound, like carbon dioxide. Which is CO2, and water, which is H2O. I could also have a mixture of an element and a compound, like, for example, if I have water and hydrogen. Now remember that hydrogen is still an element, even though it has two of them, because it's two of the same. So those are some examples. And it doesn't have to just be two things mixed together. It can be three, it can be four, it could be any number really. But the important thing is that they're not bonded together. So I'm not writing them as a combined formula. If I'm writing them as a combined formula, then I'm dealing with a compound. All right, I'll freeze the screen to let you guys have some time to write that down. And we'll practice that information.